You know that feeling when you're reading like a corporate press release and you can just sense the aggressive optimism radiating off the page?
Oh, yeah. Like everything is presented as this, polished diamond,
Exactly. Every single word has been scrubbed by a PR team,
sanitized by legal.
right, and buffed by marketing until it just shines.
And it creates this document that is, fundamentally flawless, but usually completely divorced from reality.
So divorced from reality.
You're basically reading the end result of a massive corporate anxiety attack, but you never actually get to see the panic itself.
Well, okay, but imagine if someone handed you one of those polished diamonds and taped to the bottom of it was like the jeweler's private messy notebook.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Right. A notebook explaining exactly which flaws they had to hide, which cracks they were terrified you might notice.
And like a strict list of things they absolutely could not say out loud, like, under any circumstances.
Which is the ultimate corporate slip-up. Seeing an internal "do not say this" list out in the wild is just endlessly fascinating.
Because it tells you what a company is actually afraid of.
Exactly. And that is exactly the gold mine we have for you today. Welcome to this deep dive.
Thrilled to be here.
So our source material today is a draft press release from a tech company headquartered in Singapore. They're called EON AI Ventures.
Right.
And they're announcing a new position paper. It's titled "The Gap Between the Classroom Door and the Job."
Which is a great title, honestly.
It is. But our mission today isn't just to, read you a corporate announcement. We are going to explore this massive structural blind spot in high-risk industries that this paper points out.
A blind spot where lives are literally on the line. Which is compelling enough on its own because structural issues in industrial operations are rarely discussed this openly.
Yes, but the real hook for you today, the reason we are diving into this specific document,
Yeah.
is that the text we obtained still has the internal notes for the editor attached at the very bottom.
The stuff boldly labeled internal, remove before issue.
Yes. Someone forgot to delete it. And these notes show exactly what EON deliberately kept out of their own release and the strategic, legal, and psychological reasons why they did it.
It is a completely unfiltered look behind the curtain.
So unfiltered.
Okay.
Okay, let's unpack this. We should probably start with the core problem EON is actually trying to solve before we get to their juicy internal secrets.
Yeah, to appreciate the secrets, you really have to understand the stakes of the environment they're operating in.
Which are huge.
Massive. So the central argument EON makes is that the industrial training market.
Right, like the ecosystem of suppliers for high-risk industries. Energy manufacturing, heavy engineering.
Exactly. That whole market is split into two distinct halves that structurally never interact.
The first half is the training side. So they teach you about the work, they certify that you took a class, and then their involvement just abruptly ends the second you walk out the classroom door.
You're certified, they're done.
Right.
But then you have the second half of the market, which sits inside the actual daily operations.
And the fatal flaw here, as the paper points out, is that this operational side begins from the assumption that the worker is already fully competent.
Right. It assumes the training from the first half worked perfectly.
And that you can just apply it directly to whatever chaotic situation is happening on the ground today.
But EO makes a really crucial distinction here. They say neither of these halves is actually failing at their specific jobs.
Yeah, the gap isn't caused by incompetence.
It is caused by economics.
How so?
Well, the founder, Dan Ledurskar, he points out that this market was built on two entirely different budgets, controlled by two entirely different buyers.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
The training department has a budget to certify compliance. The operations department has a budget to hit production targets.
So they are both structurally excellent at their own mandates, but neither is incentivized or even funded to cover that messy middle ground where the two worlds collide.
Exactly. That structural divide is the core issue.
It makes me think of an analogy. It's like the difference between an architect and a firefighter.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Because the training department is the architect. They designed this beautiful, pristine blueprint in a totally controlled environment. Everything is theoretically perfect.
But the operations side is the firefighter.
Yes, the firefighter who has to navigate that exact same building while it is actively on fire.
The walls have collapsed.
The layout doesn't match the blueprint anymore, and the architect and the firefighter, they just have entirely different tools and budgets.
So that terrifying space between the perfect blueprint and the burning building,
That is the gap.
that's the gap. And the thing is, in high-risk industries, the burning building doesn't even have to be a literal explosion.
No, Eon's text highlights incredibly mundane situations where this gap becomes super dangerous.
The mundane aspect is what makes it so terrifying, honestly.
Yeah, it really is. They're talking about, like, ordinary Tuesday mornings, the very first time a newly trained person stands in front of a specific machine in the real world.
Or a situation where a plant has been modified.
Right, maybe a pipe was moved.
Or a valve was replaced since the training material was authored, 5 years ago. Because factories are living entities.
They get patched and upgraded constantly.
Constantly. And a worker might be a contractor moving between 3 different facilities in a single week.
Each with entirely different operational standards.
It's chaos.
There is a drafted quote from Dan Lajerskar in this release that just nails this dynamic perfectly.
What does he say?
He says, "Everybody in this market is either teaching people about work or recording work after it happened. Almost nobody is present at the moment the work is being done. But it is where people get hurt and somebody has to stand there."
Somebody has to stand there. Wow.
It really hits you, right?
It forces you to visualize this single human being, entirely alone, staring down a massive piece of heavy industrial equipment.
At like 3 in the morning.
Exactly, realizing the manual doesn't match the machine in front of them.
So how does EON actually propose bridging this gap? Because they don't take the traditional route, right? They don't just put out a feature comparison chart.
Yeah. No, they don't. Instead, they group the solution into this rigorous set of technological demands.
6 requirements, they call them.
Yeah, they basically say, if you want to solve this, your software has to understand physics, it has to compute consequences on the fly, and it has to do all of this without requiring an army of 3D artists.
They are setting a massive hurdle for the entire market.
They argue that visual simulations just aren't enough anymore. The system needs a functional model.
It cannot just be a pretty 3D picture.
Right, it has to act and react the exact way the actual machine acts.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little, because requirement number 2 in their text really tripped me up.
Which one was that?
They demand a way to build these working functional models without a massive modeling project.
Yes.
That sounds like classic vendor vaporware.
Yeah.
Usually, mapping a complex industrial facility requires laser scanning, teams of CAD engineers, millions of dollars.
And months of rendering time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how on earth do you build a functional model without a modeling project?
It totally sounds like an empty promise until you look at the underlying mechanism they describe in their About boilerplate section.
Okay, what's the mechanism?
So EON utilizes a platform they call Work Intelligence. And instead of a traditional manual 3D modeling pipeline, the platform ingests simple, flat inputs,
Flat inputs, like what?
like standard photographs or just basic 2D engineering drawings.
Wait, hold on. So it's turning 2D flat images into a functional physical space.
Essentially, yes. It uses AI to extrapolate the physical boundaries and spatial relationships from those flat images.
That's wild.
And then, crucially, it applies a physics engine to that generated model.
Oh, like a video game.
Think of exactly how a modern video game engine operates. The developers don't have to pre-program every single way a rock can bounce down a hill.
Right, they just give the rock mass and gravity.
And the engine computes the rest dynamically. EON is doing that for industrial procedures.
So if a worker turns a specific digital valve in the model,
The system computes the resulting pressure buildup in real time, rather than relying on some pre-written multiple-choice logic tree.
so they are completely bypassing the million-dollar digital twin phase
Bypassing it entirely.
and generating a mathematically sound simulation that they can deliver straight to the worker's device.
Which leads perfectly into the 4 practical questions EON challenges buyers to ask any supplier. They want to completely change the criteria for how this software is purchased.
Because if I were a buyer, my immediate questions would be about, I don't know, server uptime or bulk licensing discounts.
Or integration with your legacy HR software.
Exactly. But EON wants buyers to ask things like, is the measurement coming from a simulation or the actual job?
Or who rebuilds the content when the plant changes?
But the standout question for me, the one that really got me, is who helps the worker at 6 in the morning with no signal?
That question completely punctures the hype of modern cloud computing.
It really does.
You could have the most sophisticated AI on the planet, running on massive server farms. But if your worker is deep inside a concrete bunker,
Or out on a remote oil rig, with absolutely zero Wi-Fi.
Right. And a critical pressure alarm goes off. Who helps them?
If the software requires a constant internet connection to render the model, it fails precisely at the moment the worker's life depends on it.
The model has to live locally on the device.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, EON is attempting to shift the entire industry's standard of measurement.
Shifting it away from what?
Away from, did the worker pass the test in a comfortable room, to, did the worker execute the task safely in a dead zone at 6 a.m.?
They are completely moving the goalposts for the entire competitive landscape.
Which brings us to their marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Or I should really say their unmarketing strategy.
Yes. This is fascinating.
Because normally a position paper is basically a Trojan horse. It pretends to be an objective industry analysis, but by page 3...
It's just a billboard screaming, look how amazing our product is.
Yes. But EON takes a totally different, highly unusual approach for a tech vendor. They dedicate a huge portion of their paper to explicitly listing what they cannot do.
They lay out their own limitations very, very clearly.
They admit they do not authorize work or issue safety permits.
They clarify they do not accredit or certify anyone.
And they state up front that they do not match the process fidelity of dedicated operator training simulators.
Let's define that term quickly for everyone.
Yeah, what is process fidelity?
When they say they lack process fidelity, they mean they aren't building a $10 million exact one-to-one digital twin of a highly specific nuclear control room where every single wire is simulated.
Got it. So they provide functional point-of-work models, but they aren't replacing those ultra-high-end dedicated simulators.
And they are openly admitting that to the buyer.
They also have a strict naming no one policy. They refuse to name or disparage competitors. They just describe categories of suppliers instead of targeting specific products. Here's where it gets really interesting. If you're a buyer, how do you read this? Is this radical transparency, or is this just a highly sophisticated psychological PR strategy?
Are they playing 4D chess?
Exactly. Are they?
Well, think about how you evaluate a software vendor in your own career. B2B enterprise buyers are incredibly cynical.
Oh, absolutely.
They sit through dozens of pitches a year where every single startup promises to revolutionize their entire workflow.
And solve every problem flawlessly. Everyone promises the moon.
Exactly. So when EON walks into the room and leads with, here is exactly what our software is too dumb to do, it acts as a massive pattern interrupt.
It catches you off guard.
Dan Lajerskar has a great quote about this in the notes. A paper that only describes other people's limits is marketing. If we're going to ask buyers to interrogate this market properly, we have to be the first ones interrogated.
It's brilliant. If I am selling you a used car, and before you even open the door, I point out the scratch on the bumper and the tear in the back seat.
You are significantly more likely to trust them when they tell you the engine is in perfect condition.
Exactly. They are disarming the buyer's skepticism by volunteering their own flaws.
It builds a foundation of credibility that a polished, flawless marketing brochure simply cannot achieve.
Which perfectly sets up the absolute gold mine at the end of this source text, the internal remove before issue editor notes.
The messy notebook taped to the bottom of the diamond.
It is a literal checklist of corporate anxieties.
Yeah.
And we so rarely get to see the scaffolding of corporate communications like this.
It's incredible. So the notes begin by explaining the strategic reason why the release focuses on the structural gap in the industry rather than attacking competitors.
Right. The internal logic dictates that a release focus on competitors is not actual news. It simply invites a response and reads as petty disparagement.
But a release about a structural industry problem, that constitutes a point of view.
And a point of view is publishable by media outlets.
It is a masterclass in media manipulation. They know journalists won't print a hit piece on a rival company, but they will totally print a thought leadership piece on an industry crisis.
Wow. Then we arrive at the deliberately not in this release section, the kept out list.
This is the best part.
First on the chopping block. Any competitor name in any category ranked against another, the internal justification. Naming is what converts a point of view into an exposure.
Exposure. I mean, in the context of B2B enterprise sales, that is a terrifying concept.
It sounds so loaded. What does that actually mean for them in practice?
Well, if a tech company names an incumbent competitor in a press release, you aren't just sparking a friendly debate. You
Not.
are inviting retaliation. The competitor's massive legal team might hit you with a cease and desist for tortious interference.
Right, or their PR firm might launch a whisper campaign about your software's bugs.
Exactly. You turn a philosophical argument into a muddy, expensive street fight. So by keeping names out, EON N protects its narrative from being hijacked by an angry competitor.
That makes total sense. Next on the kept out list are the juicy statistics, the kind of numbers a marketing department literally dreams of. They kept out a figure stating 70% of incidents have human and organizational causes,
Why would they cut that?
because the internal notes admit it is not yet sourced to a citable authority, meaning it cannot appear as fact in a public release.
That is real discipline. They also stripped out internal metrics regarding downtime and the cost of incidents.
Because those numbers are only approved for private one-on-one sales outreach, not for external publication.
They even had placeholders for lives saved and trillion-dollar figures?
You can just imagine the original draft, right?
Right.
Claiming EON saves lives in trillions of dollars.
And then someone in legal had to slap a giant red internal sticky note on it saying, we cannot publish this until we find an external source to validate it.
You're watching the natural, aggressive enthusiasm of a sales team colliding head-on with the cold, unforgiving reality of corporate liability.
It's beautiful to watch.
But the absolute most striking item on this kept-out list, what I would call their golden rule, is this specific phrase: we prevent incidents.
Yeah.
The internal note next to it simply reads, standing rule, not said in any external material.
This raises such an important question. Why would a company whose entire product is designed to increase safety absolutely refuse to say the words, we prevent incidents?
Because it's a promise they can't mathematically keep.
Exactly. In complex industrial environments like oil rigs, chemical plants, heavy manufacturing,
Statistical inevitability dictates that eventually an incident will occur.
a pipe will burst, a sensor will fail, human error will compound.
Right.
If your public marketing materials explicitly promise prevention and an incident does happen, you aren't just facing a bad news cycle.
What are you facing?
You have essentially handed the victim's lawyers a golden ticket to sue you into oblivion for breach of promise.
Oh, wow.
You can provide the tools to navigate a crisis, but the moment you guarantee an outcome, you take on the liability for the entire facility.
It is a profound exercise in risk management. They are ruthlessly policing their own enthusiasm.
Ruthlessly.
Finally, we see the deeply crafted reality of the whole production in the before-issue checklist.
Yeah, tell them about the quotes.
It plainly states that Dan Lajerskar approves both of his quotes, or replaces them, noting explicitly that they are drafted, not spoken.
I mean, we all rationally know that executives don't sit around spontaneously uttering perfectly structured, grammatically flawless press release quotes.
Right, but seeing the PR team literally write out drafted, not spoken is just a wonderful peek into the inherent artificiality of corporate communications.
It really is, and the checklist concludes by clarifying that the white paper is the real asset, while the press release only exists as a vehicle to point people toward it.
Furthermore, the legal department must review the release, the white paper, and the FAQ simultaneously.
It's not just a quick read-through. It's a tightly choreographed dance to ensure the entire tapestry of documents manages liability perfectly,
They have to sound wildly authoritative, innovative, and disruptive.
without ever once stepping over the invisible line into actionable legal liability.
It's incredible. So what does this all mean for you? We started this journey by exploring a very genuine, very dangerous structural gap in high-risk industrial operations.
We looked at that terrifying space between the perfect classroom blueprint and the frantic, burning building of the actual job.
We explored how EON AI Ventures is attempting to bridge that gap with AI-generated functional models and offline point-of-work assistance.
But what we really uncovered was a masterclass in corporate self-awareness and PR restraint.
We saw the polished diamond, but we also got to read every single note in the messy jeweler's notebook underneath.
I think this leaves us with a highly provocative thought to consider, especially when you think about how you evaluate the companies in your own industry.
Yeah.
We live in an ecosystem absolutely overflowing with corporate hype, with startups promising to revolutionize the world and eliminate every inefficiency.
Right. Everyone has a magic bullet.
But perhaps the most honest, revealing, and authentic document a company can ever produce isn't its flashy marketing video or its list of disruptive features.
What is it then?
Maybe the truest reflection of a company's reality is its internal list of things it is absolutely forbidden to say.
Because it's in that silence, in the specific claims they deliberately keep off the page, that you find out exactly what they are genuinely afraid of.
And exactly how the game is truly played.
And that is a wrap on our deep dive into the gap. We will catch you next time.